We've been in Sanford in the Edenville area all afternoon, and we'll be here all night. As you can see behind me, I'm on the bridge on Saginaw Road. That is water, trees completely overtaken. The bridge behind me, look how high that water level is with all that debris. So we talked to a resident about all of the impact that's happened. That's coming up tonight on 9 and 10 News at 10 and 11.
Yes, it's been such an exciting day to be a Red Wings fan. Hall of Famer and 3-time Stanley Cup champ Steve Yzerman is coming home.
Woo!
Have you been on your phone today, like everybody else?
Everybody is a buzz.
Facebook and Twitter. Yeah. I know the second I saw it when I woke up this morning, I checked my phone. I jumped right out of bed. I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. So everybody's going nuts. But just an hour ago, the captain was officially named the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Media's Input. I am your host, James A. Paxson. To check out episode 4 and previous episodes, go to the YouTube channel, James Paxson. Episode 4 had Claybird, who is the content director and DJ from 3 to 8 on Mix 106.3 in Saginaw. That was a fun interview. But today, I have my first TV reporter and anchor, Miss Cassidy Cobb from 9 and 10 News in Cadillac. How are we doing?
I'm great. Thank you for doing this. I think this is really awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a perfect time when not a lot of sports people are working and a bunch of people in the media don't have jobs to talk about their jobs. So they at least have some excuse to keep doing what they love doing instead.
Yeah, because for me, I got transitioned to news. So thankfully still working. But yeah, to be able to talk about what I actually do with sports I'm like, thank God.
Have you noticed a big difference from the shift from sports to news?
Yes and no. You still have your deadlines. You're still, putting content together. I did a lot of feature stories, as a sports reporter and anchor. So some of it is still kind of there. And I'm still, if there's something sports going on, I usually kind of try to grab it. So we had a guy that ran the length of M22. So I was like, it's sports, he's running. So I'm like, I'm going to go talk to him and, we've had some coaching hires for high school sports, so I've been able to do that. So thankfully still get a little bit of my fix. We had some NFL draft. We had some guys get drafted from up here, so there was different things like that. So at least little bits and pieces, but yeah, it's been different for sure. We don't do a lot of day turns when it comes to packages and to different stories. Usually if we're turning anything that night, it's highlights. So to day turn VOSATs and packages for anybody who knows what those are, that's been a little different, but nothing you can't handle, right?
Well, you got pretty lucky that you got shifted from news. Do you think you're going to stay in news when sports comes back, or do you think you're going straight back to sports?
I'm hoping I get to go back just because I do miss it. I miss it a lot. I miss, like I said, we do so many high school sports up here. So I miss the kids. I miss the coaches. Since I am up north in northern Michigan, very close knit, very tight communities. So being especially high school football, you kind of get intertwined in all of it. So I miss that. And I'm hoping come the fall that it all comes back. But you never know with everything going on. There's so much unknown, so it can be, it's very up in the air. So we'll see. I'm fingers crossed, but I'm going to do whatever they need me to do just because that's what they're going to need. And I'd rather have a job than not. So
what do you think sports will look like this fall? Do you think you'll have high school football games with no fans? Do you think there'll be some, not others? Do you think there won't be any high school sports? What do you envision the fall to look like for athletics?
So it's so hard to tell because I feel like some days we're like, this is happening. We're good. Everything will be kind of back to normal come September, August, that time. But then there's days where you're like, oh no, this is going to go on forever. So I think my guess is going to be they will happen, but probably no or limited fans, which I think for high school sports is so hard because for kids, I feel like they feed off that energy. They feed off a crowd. They feed off their student section. And then even just for high school students in general, that's usually where you go on Friday nights or on your weeknights or whatever. So it's taking some experience away from it. But I feel like that's probably what we'll see a lot of is things will go on. We won't have fans.
I think that's probably what's going to be best. And hopefully in 2021, we can get the fans to come back. And hopefully by next year, everything will be back to normal.
Fingers crossed.
So kind of talk to me about how you decided to get into this career and why you decided to pick the TV route over other routes.
Okay, so I grew up an athlete and a sports fan my entire life. We always talk about how when I was a baby, my parents worked opposite shifts. So when my mom would go to work, my dad would come home, and when my dad came home, he'd sit me on his lap and we'd watch SportsCenter. So that's kind of where it started. And then I grew up a huge Michael Jordan fan, which the Last Dance series was absolutely amazing and everything I wanted it to be and more. So to have that. So I grew up just being around it. My brother was an athlete. I was an athlete. We were in sports. I played just about every sport under the sun. And as I got older, I had told myself I wanted to be a veterinarian. And got into middle school, and we dissected frogs, and I came home from school that day, and I told my mom, I can't do this. So she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I've always done musicals and plays and spoken church, because I went to a Catholic school, and different things like that. So my mom's like, you could do that kind of thing for a living. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you could be on the news. You could be going to broadcasting. And I thought about it, and it kind of became clear. I'm like, that would be pretty cool. That would be, I think, something that would fit me really well. So then I went into public speaking classes. I took the TV class we had at our high school, and job shadowed people and got to know as many people as I could in the industry and talk to them. And TV just seemed like the best route. And then once I got to CMU, I was like, this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to do. And then sports kind of came as the process went. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. And then got to campus, and I was like, I think sports is it. And that's been my personality my entire life. So that's where we're at. So
You brought up The Last Dance. What do you think was the most important thing you got out of that documentary?
I just, I don't remember hearing from Jordan much about his personal life. So being able to kind of touch on that was really cool and see different people's perspectives, and not just as much as I was like, I don't agree with you. I liked seeing some people disagree with him, because I feel like he's also been, put on a pedestal, which I've 100% done it. I'll call him the GOAT, and we can get into that argument later. But I would say just seeing all facets of kind of what happened. And I know some people think that he was probably not the best teammate in the world, but he's one of those people. It's like he did this to make everybody better. And I loved seeing his, like, you saw it then, but there's times when I was too young to remember a lot of the stuff that happened. But to see even now still how much his drive and his passion and all of that, and that hard work ethic. So those were the parts that I think I took away the most with.
Do you think there's anything LeBron can do to make him better than Jordan in your eyes?
When you look stat-wise and the fact that he's still going, I would say he will probably surpass. And to most people now, he probably is the GOAT, and especially the generation that has grown up with him. But for me, just because Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan, like, I don't think LeBron will. I always hated that they were compared even years ago. And so I think I just have that chip on my shoulder. But for most people, I know that, even didn't Scottie Pippen say, like, LeBron James was better, Kobe was better? Like, there's those things, and it's all a matter of opinion, and I respect everybody's opinion, but that one's mine. Just like people have gotten on me and say Tom Brady's the GOAT, but some people don't agree with that, and some people have their opinions on that, but that's just me. So
So recently with 9 and 10 News, you covered some of the protests, and you've covered the flood quite a bit. What are some similarities and differences you've seen from covering sports to those two events, and kind of talk about some experiences that you've been through in the past couple of weeks covering the floods and, of course, the protests in the past weekend?
Yeah, so I think the biggest similarity, because I love this question. When you sent me the questions earlier, I was like, that's a good one. The in the moment type of atmosphere. Sports is in the moment. When you're shooting highlights, when you're going to cover a game, play-by-play color, those things, that is in the moment. And that's what these big moments like the flooding in mid-Michigan and then these protests and what's going on all across the country right now. So I think that's where sports kind of can prepare you, where you can kind of think on your feet and you know how to describe what's going on and kind of bring that to people, because I think that's definitely a big part of sports. Differences, I mean, sports are usually fun. And what we've been covering a lot in the last couple of weeks, last couple months, even with the whole pandemic, it's not fun. The flooding was devastating to walk down there and to see people and to talk to people who their houses are gone. They've got their belongings floated away. There's all these damage, and like Sanford especially, like that town, I don't know how they'll recover. It's a tiny town, and I went down when they were in the middle of cleanups, and I hadn't seen that downtown area yet, and I just walked through with my jaw on the ground, just couldn't believe it. The same thing with the protests. It's just with what kind of had happened, but at the end of it, you can see the beauty of everything. With Sanford, it was all these people coming together. There was people all over the place cleaning stuff up, taking carpets out of like houses that were drenched in water, and all these people, there's guys going around making sure the American flags were still hung up, which was a really cool thing to see. And then these protests, yesterday I went to the one at CMU, and that one was really cool because I'm an alum of Central, and to see a student organize it and have everybody on board. Had faculty president Davies was there. There was plenty of faculty members and professors, all these students, community members. And then they also had the police force and all of law enforcement in Mount Pleasant on board. So, and they had no problem with it. I talked to the county sheriff, and he was like, I'm glad they did this. I'm glad they brought it to us so that we could listen. And it was just really cool to see people come together. So that's at least a positive takeaway in all of this. But yeah, there are definitely some similarities, and I think sports prepared me for it, of thinking on the fly and kind of being in the moment and taking people to it.
With all the stories that you've covered, what do you think's the coolest sports story that you've ever covered that you still think about to this day, that it was so cool that you were able to film that moment?
So I have one story which is more of a feature story, so I did it over a couple weeks. It is a story that is probably the nearest and dearest to my heart. I remember it was this past football season. There was a team, people probably might not even know, Pellston. So Pellston is just north of Petoskey. It's a tiny, tiny school, tiny, tiny town. And they have not had the greatest football team in the last few years. Well, we're in week 5 and they're undefeated. So of course for us, we're like, we see that, let's head up there. So I go up there and I'm talking with the athletic director, and he was kind of helping me coordinate stuff, and with the coach. So I talked to the coach, and I said, if you can give me a couple kids that I can talk to about the season. He's like, I've got 4 seniors. They're my 4 captains. I'll send them over to you in pairs. So the first one comes over, and it's these 2 kids. And the first kid has this big smile on his face, and he's just super like charismatic and funny. And I put the mic on him, and when you interview somebody, you say, can you say and spell your first and last name for me? And he goes, my name is Lakota Worthington. You better remember that. Like, just this funny, cute kid. And does a great interview, talks about how great the team is, and they're all brothers and all that stuff. And finish the second interview, they walk away. The athletic director says to me, you knew that kid's story. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, he's been through a lot. So do the other interviews, I was like, tell me more about him. He said, well, he lives by himself. His dad passed away right after his brother passed away, and now he's living on his own. He comes to school every day. He's the captain of the football team. He's kind of keeping everybody together. Everybody's rallying around him. He's like, he's the rock star of the school. All the little kids love him. He goes and plays basketball with them at lunch, like just this great kid. And I was like, I need to talk to this kid. I need to know more about him. So I went to another practice, drove him home from practice, and went to his house with him, where literally he cooks his own food. He gets himself up every morning. He has a part-time job that he doesn't have a car, but he gets himself to. He coordinates all that. And his grades have gone up since all of this happened. And he's now leading the football team. He's one of the better players on the team. He's on the basketball team. He's on the track team. just this great kid. And I sat down and talked to him about this and had a moment with him and was able to tell that and talk to his coaches. And they called him the heartbeat of their team, and their mascot's the Hornets. So he was the heartbeat of the Hornets. And I cried with this kid, like just very special. And now I've seen him since. I saw him back during basketball season. And I told his coach, who I'd interviewed for the story, and I was like, can you get Lakota for me? I wanted to say hi. He came sprinting across the gym and gave me a big hug and told me he got accepted into this school and he's thinking about this place for college and all that stuff. So that's been my favorite story to cover if it comes to events. I loved being able to go cover the bowl game this last year for CMU. That was a very, very cool experience because you get the bowl experience. You get the fun stuff they do and the beautiful places they're at. And I got to go to Albuquerque. Like, that was pretty cool. So be up in the mountains and go somewhere different. And the game wasn't what we wanted, obviously, but that was a pretty cool thing to cover.
You mentioned you're a CMU alum, and of course you are the host at the CMU games this past season.
Yeah.
I really want to ask you about Antonio Brown because I figured someone who went to CMU would have a good answer on this.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of weeks ago, Russell Wilson said he'd love to have Antonio Brown on the team. And I'm curious, do you think there's ever a chance Antonio is going to play again? And if he does play or doesn't play, has his off-field issues ruined his reputation?
So I want to start by saying I've interviewed him before.
Really?
Yes. So he came to the spring game back in 2018. I just started at 9 and 10. And I was on the sidelines actually with another alum, Jim Costa, who works down in Grand Rapids, has his own radio show. And he told me, he's like, I heard Antonio Brown's going to be here. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, he's going to, he comes into town every once in a while. I'm like, yeah, no, that's pretty cool. So I see this mob of people come onto the field and I'm like, that's him. I see all these other people go over and flock to him. I was on the opposite side of the field. I see all these other people go flock to him and I see people talking to him. And I'm like, we need to go interview him. So I grabbed my camera guy, Greg Miller, who's another alum from CMU, and he's worked at 9 and 10 for a very long time. He's awesome. And I grab him. I'm like, we're going to go interview him. So I go over there and I had a mic in my hand and he had 2 security guards and 2 social media people. So these guys, literally their phones, they're like in his face and like all this stuff. And so security guard looks at me and he sees the microphone. He goes, do you want to talk to him? And I was like, yeah, is that possible? He goes, give me a second. Pulled him away, let me do a one-on-one interview with him. So I walked up and I shook his hand and I was like, hi, my name's Cassidy Cobb. I'm with 9 and 10 News, one of the local news stations here. And he shook my hand back and goes, hi, I'm Antonio Brown. It's nice to meet you. And he was so polite. He was so nice. He was very gracious of CMU too. And I get it. He's talking to a local news person. Of course he's going to be, but was a great interview. And so he's done decent things for CMU and the heated benches and donated stuff. And which I think is great. Definitely always remembered where he came from. But he is a bit of a wild card and I wouldn't doubt that he comes back. So lately he's been pretty quiet. He had the big outburst back in, over last summer and the beginning of the season and all that stuff. And it was the whole controversy and he did some things that nobody would approve of. But you can't deny raw talent. And with the way the NFL works, sometimes that's all you need. It doesn't matter, who's who and what you've done. If you can play football, you're probably going to play football. So, I thought maybe he would go to the XFL or something like that. But I think that, especially with a leader like Russell Wilson, that could be very helpful to kind of wrangle him back if need be. And honestly, the Seattle organization anyway. But I could definitely see it. I would not count it out. But I definitely think that people are not going to be as big of fans as him. Everybody went around, business is booming. That was the cool thing. He's been awesome. Everybody loved AB. He was just kind of a jerk. And then things started to kind of get worse. I was like, ooh, maybe not. But I could definitely see it happening. But I don't think he's going to be as loved or have as many fans because of what has happened.
Would you be shocked if he never plays again?
Honestly, I would. Just because I feel like somebody will pick him up, somebody is going to get desperate and be like, you know what, we're going to, take that hit possibly if, with media and something that he could possibly do off the field. But yeah, I could see it. I see him coming back. I do.
Well, I do hope he comes back because he's an amazing player, and he was
Right.
amazing to watch with the Steelers. And I thought, maybe something was going to happen with the Raiders, but that ship sailed very quickly as soon as the preseason started. So hopefully he finds a team, and hopefully he finds a good home.
Honestly, I was excited when he went to the Patriots. I was like, okay. I was like, maybe Tom Brady can wrangle him down and Bill Belichick will get on his case. Like, I thought for sure, like, he kind of found that spot, and then obviously all of the allegations came out, and I totally get why that's a PR nightmare, and people are like, we're dropping you, we're done. So, and I think from what I've seen, because just like everybody else pretty much from CMU, we all follow him on social media. We all have his Instagram and everything and have watched the dumpster fire that it's been at times. But I think that he's definitely quieted down and kind of gotten his life a little bit more together. He stopped rapping, which that was terrible. I couldn't believe that when I watched. I was like, I thought maybe it would be okay. And I was like, this is bad. So I'm hoping that was the rock bottom and he can just kind of climb back up from there.
Hopefully you're right. That's something I would like to see eventually. To younger people trying to get into this career or younger people thinking about a career in television or sports reporting, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, this is a good question too. So a lot of the advice that I would give is something you probably hear from everybody, and it's because it is so true. You got to stay true to yourself, I think is a big thing. I've had people, like I originally, when I first graduated college, I wasn't in sports. I was actually a news producer. And I had my boss there because sports is very hard to get into. Tell me, he's like, you should consider just moving to news full time and only focusing on news. And he's like, for every 100 applications I get for a news reporter opening, I get 400 for sports. So it's because more people want to be in sports. That's what kind of everybody wants to be the ESPN and to do all that stuff. And they want to get there somehow. And so I get that. But I kind of told myself, I was like, I this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And your passion is going to bring you far. And I've had a lot of people tell me that because a lot of people get burnt out. A lot of people go, I don't really know if I want to do this. You work nights and weekends in sports. It's hard. It can be really hard to, balance a lot of things. But if you stay true to you and have fun with it, because that's me, like people are different, how you're going to write highlights or how you're going to edit highlights even, or how you're going to write a story, or it can be different. And I like to bring my personality out. I'm kind of goofy. So like I say funny things in the middle of highlights. I've made High School Musical references before, and but that's what's funny was the two girls that I work with on the weekends, our sports anchor and our meteorologist, not big sports people, but then they watched and they laughed and they thought it was funny because I was like, oh, we're going to pull you in this way. So that's a big one, just stay true to you and have that passion. And then just, you have to work hard. This is not easy. This is, to get my shot, I had to do a lot. When I was at Fox 17, I had another job. I worked with the West Michigan Whitecaps. And when I was at Fox 17, I was also working overnights on the weekends as a producer. So I was working 11 p.m. to 10 a.m. And I still worked at the Whitecaps over the summer. And then I went to the sports department. I said, hey, I want to shoot highlights. And they said, are you crazy? And I said, a little bit, but I want to do this. So I would come in on Fridays, like every other Friday, come in at 5 p.m., go out, shoot 2 football games, come back, write, edit, and then start my show and be there till 10 a.m. the next day. And that drive and that, that effort that you put forward, people notice it. And that's what helped me get the job up here. And up here, I've been like, put me here. I'll work an 18-hour day. I'll do this, because it's important to me and I love this. So that's been that hard work, because it's, like I said, it's not easy. And if you're in college, you can't just sit on the sidelines. You have to go into those co-curriculars, get those internships. You have to really put yourself out there, because if you don't, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Like, you might be able to get a job in a small market, but if you're not going to work to get better, then what are you doing, you know? So it's definitely about the hard work and always trying to better yourself.
What is the end goal for Cassidy Cobb? Where would you like to end up at the final stages of your career?
So this is a hard question because I feel like it changes. There's days where I'm like, I want to do network. I would love to do, you know, an ESPN, Fox Sports, even regionally would be great to do. Like, you know, a dream of mine has always been, I'm going to go report at Fox Sports Detroit and I'm going to work with John Keating and, you know, like that would be so cool. But then there's days where I'm like, I wouldn't mind maybe go a little bigger than here and staying local because I do love local and I love telling stories of kids and, you know, having those really great relationships. And then there's days where it's like, and just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that, you know, like it doesn't take away that there's days where I go, well, what if I didn't do this? What would I do? There are days where I'm like, you know, having a job that I was only 9 to 5 might be a little easier. But, you know, if it was a goal, I would probably say Fox Sports Detroit would be the end goal, and probably the most attainable too. Everybody would, of course, I would love to anchor Sports Center. How cool would that be? Like, or do College Game Day, be a Maria Taylor or Sam Ponder and Aaron Andrews. So those things would be really cool. But yeah, it changes every day, and I'm kind of just like letting the flow go with it because right now, especially, things are so weird, and the way sports I think are going to be covered and how things are going to go, like. I know people who, I mean, obviously I host as like a second job, but there's people who that is their job, is to be the host at a game. Well, are we going to have hosts? Are we going to have enough people to have fans and to have that fan interaction? So it's how that's going to go is going to change. And for us to have gone this long without real sports like we were used to has been very weird. And it's kind of shed some light on, well, how important is this and what job will there be? And there's lots of questions. So I'm hoping that everything does go back to normal and we can get back to it. But definitely, yeah, it's weird. So it changes all the time. But I think Fox Sports Detroit would be like the number one.
Where can people find you right now, and when will we be seeing you on 9 and 10?
So right now I'm on 9 and 10, usually on the weekends, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's right now reporting news. If it was sports, you'd see me anchoring the weekends. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram. On Twitter, on Cassidy Cobb TV, on Instagram, Cassidy Cobb _. And then if you just search my name on Facebook, you can find my page that you can like, and that's I post all my stories and, you know, different things, and try to keep everybody updated, not just on the new stuff I'm doing, but also on the sports stuff, especially what's going on up here in Northern Michigan.
All right. Thank you very much, Cassidy, so much. Thank you for being a guest. Check out the YouTube channel, James Paxson, to check out this interview and previous interviews. And as always, thank you very much, Cassidy.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome.